So let's get on with this afternoon, because it's going to be an amazing presentation for you. So this month's conference is about strong teams, strong schools, and we have some amazing speakers for you. So I'm not going to be too long with my normal introduction, because I want to get quickly on to hear what they've got to say to us. So after my introduction, we've got Rob and we've got Victoria Carr. And we have, Victoria Carr and Tor. So we have two Victorias today. And then, as usual, guys, say hi in the chat. If you've got any questions for these lovely speakers, put them in the chat and we'll catch them up as we go along. And hopefully we'll have a bit of a question and answer session at the end as well. So these are our wonderful speakers that you'll meet very shortly. So the Global School Alliance, for those of you who are not already members, or those of you are, it's just growing. It's an amazing online community. Our aim is to connect and collaborate with people all over the world to improve outcomes for students, basically looking at global education, creating global citizens for the future. And through the platform, through the Facebook page and through our LinkedIn group, we are providing lots of exciting opportunities to have immersive experiences and collaborate to improve education and to share practice and to learn from each other, which is fantastic. For instance, like putting on conferences such as this. So like I say, you can join, there's links here, you can use very technological, but you can use the QR code there to connect. We also have the Facebook group and the platform to be able to connect with members all over the world. We now have, I think we're close to 6,000 members now, representing 120 different countries around the world, which is fabulous. We're always trying to put on opportunities and promote exciting things like competitions, but also promote opportunities for global student engagement. So we have this competition going at the moment, but our current campaign is focusing on getting students connected, because that's what it's all about: learning from peers, learning from each other, showing them the wider world and the wider opportunities, and learning about each other's culture, which is such fun. So the programs we're offering at the moment are the flagship Sister School Partnership Program, which is a long-term relationship between two schools that would involve teacher trips, student trips, to actually go and visit each other in our schools. I think you can't beat international travel for all the skills that gives you, lots of soft skills as well. And it is so meaningful to go and actually spend time with peers. And touch wood, fingers crossed, we will all be traveling again next year. So we are making plans already for that. For those of you that aren't ready to travel or can't travel yet, we've got the virtual school partnership, so we can use the platform to connect you virtually and do projects and learn about each other through the platform and through Zoom. So we can still collect students online. We've got some workshops and online immersive programs, which are one-off programs that classes can join to learn about each other. So the student interactive workshops are going to be running in September. And the aim of that is to have a morning session where we will look at Spain, China, France, and the UK one morning each. And we'll have schools from those countries, and we can all connect and share, learn a song, have a set of question and answers to interact with, a sort of framework so the students can interact live for that morning. And we then have our online immersion programs as well. We've been running these, well, the Chinese one for a couple of years now, and we've extended to Spain. This was our virtual trip. When we couldn't do the trips, we put together a virtual trip with a live host in Spain, in Seville, a live host in Chengdu in China. And they do some guided tours with you. They introduce the culture. There's some amazing cultural craft activities, and there's always sort of a tour of a school, and again a live interactive session with peers from that country, from Chengdu and Seville as well. So there's lots of exciting things that you can get your students and your school involved in through the GSA. Please, if you want to know any more information, don't hesitate to ask us. And again, we put on the conferences. With the next conference on the calendar there is the 30th of June. Some of you might already be on your summer holidays, but it'll be worth coming to. And this one, I think we're going to be talking about how to collect global dimensions within your curriculum, which is an exciting topic. Because it's all we all know the wish list of what we'd love to do culturally, and there'll be guidelines here on how we can actually convince some of our leadership to actually do some more cultural activities and show the value of the global dimensions in our curriculum. And I didn't realize, told me today that today is a thank you teacher day, when everybody celebrates thanks to teachers. It's very appropriate that we're looking at teachers and teams today. And I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart to all you teachers out there, because you are amazing people. And I love working with all the teachers. And again, we do like to make this interactive. We don't let you sit there and just listen. So we're going to do a poll. I'm going to ask you, we're going to make this live in a minute. And also coming up, we're going to take a photograph. So be ready. So the poll, please participate, is live now. And it's basically asking you about how strong your teams are in your school, your personal opinion, obviously. So in your school, do you have teams that work well? Are the teams in place but they're not very well, or is there no real structure for teams in your school? If you can participate, it would be great to see some results. I can see you are already voting. Thank you very much. Fantastic. Oh, actually looks like we do have teams that are working. Quite even scores at the moment. It's going to be a couple more minutes to give everyone a chance to take part in the poll. Wow, 63% say teams are working well at the moment, which is good. That's fantastic to hear. Okay, just a couple more seconds. I think everybody has finished the poll. Can we show the, I'm not running this, you can tell. Hannah, can we see that, show the results? Can end the poll and show the results so everyone can see? Fantastic. So that's very good. So some schools, I say 16% still have no clear structure in school, and 20% have teams, but they're not working. So this should be a very useful conference for everybody to share. Thank you very much for taking part in that. I can remove it from my screen, it would help. There we go. Fantastic. So, and I did warn you, you're not going to sit there now participating too. So you've got 2 minutes now to just practice your smile, put your cameras on. I'm going to stop sharing and my colleagues are going to do some photographs. So we would like to see everybody who's participating. Come on, I'm going to nag you. I'm going to be my usual pain in the neck. Put your cameras on. You can turn off again afterwards, but it would be nice to see everybody. Oh, it is wonderful. Thank you everybody for turning your cameras on. It's great to see you. There's still a few there who are hiding. Come on, guys. Let's all practice our smiles. Whenever they take these screenshots, I've always got my mouth open, but I've usually got my eyes shut. So practice your smiles. Okay. Thank you very much for putting your cameras on. Great to see you all. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Have we got cameras? We okay, Hannah? Can I carry on now? I carry on sharing.
Say cheese one more time, please.
Okay. Cheese, everybody.
There you go.
Fabulous. Thanks for that. That's wonderful. Okay, now let's get on with the actual serious business. We can't wait to hear from our amazing speakers. So Rob, can I hand over to you? I'm going to stop sharing if you'd like to take the screen and introduce yourself.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Tony, and just say to Hannah and Henrietta as well, and the Global School Alliance, thank you for the amazing work that you do, and uniting us all and keeping us all together. Especially in these times. And as you say, it's amazing to see how the global community has grown with GSA. And we're very proud members of GSA here in Moldova. So I will just give me a moment. I will share my screen. You know about school leaders and technology, we're not very good. Right, that should. I'm going to do can you see my screen? Right. Perfect. Right, good. I think it's a great theme. I feel really, even though we're actually at the end of our academic year, I feel very fortunate to be sort of signing off next week, and we've got a long summer holiday ahead of us. But I love the theme for this evening. I think teams is one of those areas in schools that we don't pay enough attention to. We sort of think we know it, and we know lots of theory behind it, but actually it's one of those things that we're involved with every day. And I'm a bit of a Cynic fan, as many of you probably are as well. I've been reading his book recently about leaders eat last, and every time I end up in the canteen at 3 o'clock for my lunch, I can subscribe to that theory. I also love the idea when he said a community or a group of people who agree to grow together. And we talk about that a lot in our school, especially I'll talk about the context of heritage in Moldova in a moment. But I also like the idea about the trust, and we know that trust and respect are so implicit and are so intrinsic in all the great teams, and all of us have been involved in teams in our professional lives and in our personal lives and our kind of sort of wider cultural lives. And Cynic says it's better to have a great team than a team of greats. And I think what we're going to look at, and probably from all three of the speakers this evening, including myself, we will no doubt give you examples of all the different skills and all the different types of teams that have made our schools respectively successful. And also sometimes perhaps when we haven't had these kind of things in place, some of the mistakes have happened, or some of the things haven't quite gone the way we want them to in our organizations and in what we're trying to achieve in our school priorities. So as Tony said, I've been in Moldova. You might now finally have heard of Moldova because we're in the news for either the wrong reason, everyone telling me that the war is imminent, or the right reasons, and everybody now knows, hey ho, let's go, Chisinau to Bucharest. And we didn't do too badly in the Eurovision Song Contest this time around. So we certainly livened up from all those ballads that were playing the previous Saturday. Before I came here, I was at the Harry Potter School where J.K. Rowling was a student at Wydeen on the board there with England and Wales. A fantastic 4 years with a great team and a great community. I've been involved with the British Council for almost as long as I can remember. I'm a very proud member of the teacher task force and the Varkey network. I know some of our colleagues are here this evening, but that's an incredible global school leaders group all around the world. And we talk about teams and leadership all the time there and compare and contrast our different experiences. I kind of work between Chisinau and Bristol. My daughter, my wife, and my dog are back in Bristol at the moment because of the situation here. And if you do want to have a look, I do a few articles every now and again for TS and Independent School Magazine. And I do have a blog from here as well. Heritage International School, the founder's mission, which is emblazoned down on the corridor there, is effectively, as a 5-year-old school now, it's about giving the students the skills to meet the challenges of the future, and a very, very different type of school in Moldova than has ever previously existed. And if you know Moldova at all as a sort of post-Soviet state, you will understand exactly how crucial the mission is here, not just for this school, but also for the school's relationship with the wider national education community. We're a Cambridge school. We've just had our IGCSEs and A-level classes through. We do the IPC for our primary. It's both local and internationals. We've got a growing international community here, especially now with the prominence of Moldova, with the recent sort of war in Ukraine and the security situation. It is a beautiful school, but as we all know, you can have the best looking school and the best campus, but if the teaching and learning and the organization and the teams aren't right within, that means nothing. It's just a facade that doesn't do its job. Our school is very involved with e-twinning, very popular, and it has a huge impact with us here. We've been recognised by the British Council with their International School Award for our curriculum and innovation. We connect classrooms and cultures every day, as all the good schools do. We are a COBIS school. We've just had our accreditation in the last year. Very proud to be in COBIS and part of that network. And also, as I say, we're a very, very proud GSA school. We've built up our reputation for all our sustainability and our social responsibility and the work we do with the national education community. And I'm very pleased to say that we've just been shortlisted for this year's PI Awards in London in September with some great schools and education organisations for the Secondary Impact Award for the Global. And that for me already measures how successful the teams and the people in this school that I'm so privileged to work with have been. And it would be difficult, as I say, to talk about Moldova and where we are right now without mentioning what's on our doorstep. This is the most extraordinary of times, I have to say, as a school leader. I'm nearly 30 years in education, and the existential challenge that we have faced in these last few months has been extraordinary. And we thought the pandemic was bad enough. I'll show you my crisis management plan. I'll show you the war and conflict section. We've talked to our colleagues in Kiev in the British International School there in Ukraine, who've done a remarkable job under David Cole. You want to talk about teams, what they've had to do as a school community to get through these times. And we're still living with it. We're living with a very strange, uncertain period. But the certainty is coming from education. It's coming from the fact that the teams of people are making sure the young people have hope and they have certainty and they have the idea there's a better narrative for the future than some of the stuff that we're seeing across the border. And so when I thought about this talk and I had to walk around the school, I actually realized just how strong all the different teams are in the school, the formal and the informal ones, that make the success of this school. I had the privilege of seeing in the Skills Week, the Sixth Form Young Enterprise Group, and what they were doing. Their project was about tourism in Moldova, with the least visited country in Europe. Great wine culture. I hope it remains a hidden jewel forever and doesn't get overrun by stag weekends in like Prague or somewhere. But they did I love the way they worked together, different nationalities, different sort of groups of students, different backgrounds. I was really proud to watch those presentations. But our student councils have done a remarkable job. On that first weekend, they were already at the border supporting refugees, collecting goods, collecting things they might need, smiling as people came out of the shell shock literally, of having to leave their homes. As my colleague there, Tatiana Popper, who's worked so much for GSA and the work that they do, raising awareness, making sure our students are prepared for the future by being taught things like media literacy, critical thinking, how to spot misinformation, because that's the world they live in, unfortunately, in the 2020s. Our compassion, our social responsibility, our civic duties, all those skills and values you want to give our students, and we do that through our teams. It's been nice with the pandemic to see the masks come off. Our masks have come off, although there's a couple of kids still wearing them there. That's fine. That's their choice, and we've got to be careful still. But in the pandemic, finally, we've gone back to seeing our sports teams. We talk about reimagining education and paradigm shifts. It's just, for me, it's being together. I think what we've missed is our humanity and our ability to be together and support each other. And even through a sports team and watching the evolution of a sports team coming together. This was a couple of weeks ago. This is the American ambassador here, Kent Logston. I look at the leadership team and the governance and how we work well together, and we represented the school. Some of us at the ambassador's event recently, the open house for the international community. And I thought about how well we work together. My chair of board there in the grey suit and her support and the way they, the critical friendship, and how we all have our interactions to make the school a successful school. And I've got to talk about my grade 7 boys here. These are the misfits. They exist in every school. I'm so pleased that I found him here, and it wasn't just wealth and privilege. These are the boys that are always playing up. So I've taken on the coaching task every lunchtime, and do you know what? It's the best half hour of my school day. We need to get out of our offices more. I've realised, well, I do certainly. And so we go across and we're putting together our football team, or soccer, as one or two of them call it. And I love watching the dynamics of how this group of boys, different nationalities, how they play. Little Nikita there, the smallest one, I've got to be careful on his Russian language. Some of his words are a bit colourful, but I love how their energies and how they've kind of shaped. And it makes you really think about all the processes, the attributes, the skills, the different positions, the different sort of leaders that emerge at different times. And it's been a really joy to sort of do that and watch that. Now, most of us know from various, whatever, MPQHs, PGCEs, various talks, people who make good money out of these kind of things. Tuckman's work, Brian Tuckman's work is really, really influential. And when we look at sort of the different stages and processes that teams often go through, and when we've kind of come across this idea of the storming, norm performing, we've often looked at our own teams and our own teams' journeys. And we've all been in teams where we perhaps haven't even gone beyond the storming stage sometimes, or the forming stage, but we've all been in teams also that have been very successful. And what makes the successful team actually perform and reflect and be able to kind of use that energy and that agency to improve an organization. There's lots of different sort of ideas about the kind of characteristics and what makes up a good team. I think trust and respect are obvious. I think if you come from a good working class family like mine, you know that a good argument every now and again in the right way is a good air clearer. They like being frank and honest in Eastern Europe, which I do like, having come from Bristol, where they also like a good argument and air clearer. And we know that the clarity of purpose, and what I like in the teams that I've been involved in, is that we all want the same thing. And what you realize is we just have different ways of getting to it, but we've got to be able to kind of be together and trying to do the best for the children, trying to do the best for the students, giving them all these lovely opportunities that we want them to have, even in the most difficult of times, as we seem to be in the 2020s. And I think things like being focused on where you're going, focused on the task, making sure we utilize all the skills in our teams, that actually sometimes teams can be both strategic and operational. We all know in a school day when we have to deal with things that we weren't planning for, where you may have a schedule and a diary set, but if something happens, an accident in the playground, or a parent that's irate from an incident on the bus from the night before, or a teacher who's off ill, or a class that misbehaves, the technology doesn't work, we have to respond all the time, and we can't do it on our own as school leaders. I'm going to come on to this point because that's quite an important point for the culture of leadership that I've found in Eastern Europe, and I've worked with Eastern Europe and Russia for a long time, so I kind of like the transformation that they're going through in the sort of different styles of leadership. Leadership styles are fascinating, because there was a great article, I think it was the Kellett School head, Mark Steed, wrote recently for TS about times where we might have to use different styles of leadership within the teams to achieve different aims, or when we're at different aims of development. Now, in the Teach Task Force FARCI group, there are about 400 global school leaders from around the world. We meet regularly. We've got our next meeting, I think, next week. And I love listening to the different ways of cultures and different approaches of how these different sorts of leadership styles can work given different sets of parameters and circumstances, and how that then influences how a team comes together. And when I first started to work with Russia and Eastern Europe, because of that post-Soviet legacy, everybody's looking for the strong leader, so-called autocratic or authoritarian, the vozhd, the dominal, the boss. And it was so far removed from every team that I'd been in as a school leader, with really good leaders who delegated their powers, removed barriers, gave their power away to enable the team to actually achieve it. So it's been a really interesting journey to contrast that. And the teams that when I think back to some of the good teams I've been in, so outside the Brandenburg Gate, that's my history department from Bristol. I think about what we achieved as a history department. And there's a couple of people in that group now who are now heads in their own right, and they've gone on to that. There are people there that have enjoyed being effective in the classroom, and one or two that one left teaching. But I think back to what characterized that team in a large sort of humanities department, and how we operated and the things we achieved. And all of us were passionate about history, all of us passionate about making sure the kids had lots of opportunities and lots of different things and experiences. The British Council team there in London with the great John Rolfe in the centre, what we've achieved through being British Council ambassadors, the different way that we've worked as teams together, and learning from each other in the team. Student leadership never gets really what the kind of exposure that it should. Now, this was at Wydeen, just before this is my study. This is Dumbledore's office. And these kids were amazing. The way I love this actually wasn't a stage photograph. This is how they used to argue and thrust and parry, and all of them sort of fighting for their corner, all of them full of energy and all the things we like about young people, want to change the world. And I loved all of that. I loved the way that they were able to disagree and put together solutions and challenge each other. And I think all the great teams do all of that. And when I took over Wydeen as head, and we had such a big challenge there in the sort of community on the Welsh borders. And what we had to do was make sure we had a good team created from a very, very beaten down staff and a very toxic culture and environment. And I'll just give you some of the examples. So it was J.K. Rowling's old school. So everybody loved to talk about, it's lost its magic touch and all that kind of stuff. And they were on strike against the previous leadership. Forest of Dean, a sort of a deprived area of the UK, and sort of, high unemployment, Brexit voting, all that sort of stuff. And really, it was incredible what we did when we actually got into the school. And we started to build trust and respect and put teams together. And one of the best things we did was to get people onto things like middle leader courses. And we used schools that were good at, we looked outwards like you do in a global school. And we got involved in things like the Cabot Federation, looked at what the best schools in our area were doing, why they were successful, what made them good team schools. And it really transformed and changed the school. And it was a very positive school culture that we created. We believed in people, we actually meant it. We knew that they were crucial to the school's success, to make teams. Middle leadership is the engine of the school. We all know that as school leaders. We invested our time and money in there. We succession planned. We went through Sinek's whole golden circle and did everything with why, explained to staff why we were doing something and not what we were doing. We were transparent. We did what we said we were going to do. We didn't tell lies. We didn't raise ambitions that couldn't be fulfilled. We used our partnerships, our networks, our collaborations, all of this in a proper 21st century holistic model. I told the governors I wasn't going to be bothered about outstanding as a label, didn't mean anything to us as a school. We weren't going to jump through those hoops. We were going to play the game when we had to, but my focus on our energies was actually to build up the school for what it really meant, for something much more tangible to give to the children in the community. And in the teaching and learning and all the opportunities we created and focused on global citizenship, people pride in their communities, all of that meant we had a very successful local school. And I think as a leader, leaving a team, being able to leave a school and knowing that a team will continue and it will carry on and it will develop further. And as my chair of governors used to say, what happens if Rob falls under a bus, which was always a sobering thought, driving across the Severn Bridge back to Bristol on an evening. And again, not a stage photo. I honestly really miss that team. The lady in the yellow jacket is Gwenan. She was the union leader that took them on strike, was about to leave the school. She's now the head teacher because she loved that school so much and she loved all those kids and the community. And it's remarkable when you actually have the privilege to work with those kind of people and see all that dynamic and what made all that energy create a school that the community could be proud of. So then I thought, well, what's next in a challenge? Well, you go to Moldova, don't you? You go to Eastern Europe and you try your skills. And the thing is, you feel that if I just replicate what I did in the Forest of Dean in Chisinau, I'll be fine. But of course, we know that context and skill sets and all sorts of things, environment changed so much. And I learned lots in the first period coming out here. I did the things which any good school leader did. I listened to my community, I listened to all my staff and students and parents. I found my governors, I found out what was wrong, what was working, and ignore the Star Wars, that was one of the governors. We had to face some real challenges very quickly as a leadership team in this school, as a leadership team in flux. The pandemic hit Moldova in March, beginning of March 2020, in a way that, no one having my kids in schools in England, which was tough enough as it was. But for us, we don't have the health systems. We don't have the bureaucracy in the way that a Western country has. What I was really proud about of Heritage and the work we'd already done and the belief we'd been able to bring into our young school is this team and all this skill set that we had in our staff, which we kind of realized we were able to find a solution very, very quickly to learning and to making sure education didn't suffer and definitely wasn't a victim of COVID. The guy with the moustache is Minister Popovich. To have the Minister of Education beat down your door on a Saturday morning in a place like Moldova, where they don't particularly feel okay with us as the first international school in their country and still with a very different mindset. And working with the national education community and working with those teams of teachers, we did not want our colleagues to go without salaries or to be put on furlough without money, and sharing all of this knowledge and being able to kind of feel purpose in education was one of the biggest moments in our school's history. And we've gone from the difficulties of putting together staff of English, Russian, Romanian, 20 nationalities, some of them still with an old Soviet mindset, in terms of they want the boss to be dominating everything, they want to be able to kind of, not be involved, to building real teams. And as I said at the start, I'm really proud of the fact, the recognition that this September, they'll be sitting in London. Hopefully, I don't care if we win or not, but to be on the shortlist, some really great company there for secondary learning impact. And Moldova doesn't always get its name flown around the world much, I can tell you that now. The symbolism of me in the shirt is very purposeful there. That's kind of the local shirt. One of the things I had to do as an international leader is make sure that I respected and I didn't put myself above my teams, and that I was also part of the school and the cultures and also where I fitted into that. And that was a really important aspect, to spend time getting rid of some of the previous norms. And if we're going to do something very different here with an international school that is going to transform, and we really do believe we're creating future leaders here with all the right values, then it was more than just a case of coming in and sort of, enjoying a nice international stint abroad for a few years. And there's the team there. Tony, I apologize, I've gone a little bit. I just want to finish on Harry Truman, an underrated American president. I'm a history and politics teacher. Truman said, it's amazing what you can accomplish if you do not care who gets the credit. And I think all the great teams and the great schools, you wouldn't know who's in charge when you walk through the doors, but you would know you were in a great school, and you would know you were in a school with purpose and with people working hard every day, loving what they do, caring for the children, and making sure that school did something different. So at the end of the day, the kids went home, skipping out the door, saying, Mom, Dad, guess what I did today in school? And I think that's where I feel it's a privilege it's a privilege to do this job anyway, to be involved in so many great teams. And it's what we're doing now as we face what's going to happen with the war and what's going to happen with some of the uncertainty. But we know as long as we can keep what we're doing here and as a team support each other and work together, there's nothing we can't accomplish. So thank you for listening and enjoy the summer when it comes to all of you. Okay, right, thank you. I'm stop sharing now.
Wow, Rob, thank you so much. Again, so much information, so much sharing there. It's fantastic. I think hopefully lots of people have taken away a lot from that. Good job we recorded it so we can, I think, unpick it all. There was so much in there afterwards. And like I say, thank you very much for spending time with us. Enjoy your summer. We did actually do a little bit of a asking people for comments on the Global School Alliance Facebook page as well, and asked people to share what they thought were the 3 most important characteristics of a strong team. So I just wanted to share, we've got 4 people that have shared their ideas. Actually, I've just seen Fethi's joined us. So Fethi was one of them. When we asked him to the top 3 most important characters, he put ability to share, trust and understand via empathy, flexibility and active listening, and reciprocal accountability. Doha again, Doha Bakar, you've also put down respecting others, different opinions, trust, fair play and willingness to share information. Srinivas Aluro from India again, thank you. You put down communicate well with each other, good leadership and being organized. And Edith Kagosi also, they resolve conflict, fulfill your own tasks, but also help others. So I think all the things that Rob has been saying too, I think there is definitely a common theme and common practices in there. So I can't wait now to hear from Dr. Victoria Carr, who is joining us from Woodlands Primary. Vicky, would you like to share your screen and introduce yourself?
I'm not sharing my screen. I think Henry.
Oh, you're not, are you? I'm sharing the screen.
Oh, you are? It's fine. But hello, everyone. I'm actually not in school. We finished for half term in England. We have midterm breaks that we call half term. And so we just finished today, which I'm really tired. You probably see in my face that I'm tired. And I suppose everybody in education reaches that point where they have a little break and they are pretty tired. So that's how I am today. So hopefully I can inject some energy into my talk this evening, and I won't keep you too long because I'm sure some of you are on different timelines to me. But essentially, I'm a head teacher. I'm in England. I'm in quite a deprived area, and I know that I've lived in Kenya and I've lived in Germany. I've travelled a little bit in my kind of spare time, so I do know that we all live and work in different places, diverse environments. And I know that our challenges will all be different. However, I do think, and some of the things I'll talk about hopefully in a minute, I do think that some of our opportunities are very similar. And I think when we work with people, those opportunities need to be very carefully looked after, because the privilege of working with other humans means that we can both raise them up and help them to be wonderful and help their lives to be transformed, but also sadly that we can have the opposite effect. And I think, again, there'll be many people listening to today's talk who have worked with people who have probably affected their self-esteem or their understanding of their own professional journey and so on. So what I'll talk to you about really quickly before I share my talk with you is a little bit about my life. I've done a TED Talk, so if you want to know about that, you can watch the TED Talks. I'm not going to talk about that, but the last couple of years, I have joined the British Army Reserves. And I've come late to the academic side of leadership. Most of my leadership has been learned in an intuitive way, mostly by mistakes. Tony, who's running the chat tonight, I taught her daughter about could be 13, 14 years ago for a couple of years. And I was a deputy head in that school and made a few mistakes and learned from them, and then became a head teacher. And I'm currently in my second headship. So why did I go and join the British Army? Well, a couple of years ago, I finished my doctorate and I thought I was bored. What would I do with my spare time? And a friend of mine suggested that I keep pretty fit physically and, I've got transferable skills, which we all have in education. So what would I do with those skills? Go and join the army, which I did. And what I can tell you that I've learned about leadership and about the practical elements of leadership from joining the army is that the army have a really good way of distilling things that I hadn't already known into bite-sized chunks. So here's the thing. The first thing about being a good leader is about being a good follower. And I didn't realize that necessarily until I joined the army. So what do I mean about that? As a follower in the army, when I did my basic training, I had to learn personal accountability. And I know that Tony's just said, somebody mentioned on the Facebook chat that accountability was really important. And I think it is, but I think it should come from yourself. So if you are personally accountable for your actions, for your behavior, for your thoughts, for your deeds, that's really good. But also knowing what is expected of you, a code, they have a very clear style about what you what you should be in charge of as a person. You then have an expectation, and it's laid out for you from day one, that you are specifically concerned with looking after the person next to you. So it's called the buddy-buddy system. So you've got personal accountability, and you are also accountable to the one person who's next to you. So you can't be selfish. There's absolutely no way you can be selfish. And I think that trust element comes through really clearly. And again, Tony mentioned it earlier. So you have to trust the person next to you that they are going to have your back and you will have theirs. They have to trust you as much as you trust them. And everybody knowing and understanding what their role is and what is expected of them, so that personal accountability feeds into that element of what you're looking out for in one another. Then you have to have complete clarity that you have got faith in the person who's leading you. And in the army, the smallest possible unit is something called a section, and it's 8 people. For some of you in your schools, that could be your year group or your phase. In my school, it is 2 year groups. So it could be year 3 and 4. It could be 6 teachers. But we have got phase leaders who are responsible for those teachers and those classes and the pastoral side of what goes on in those children's lives. But in the army, that section commander is responsible for a lot of things, taking direction from the person who's one up from them, and also communicating really clearly to all those people in that section. And again, Tony mentioned earlier, somebody had commented on Facebook that communication is really important. And I think that is a key leadership skill, because if you cannot communicate your intent or your desire or your purpose or your value system to your colleagues, then they will have no way of knowing how to meet that intent or how to make that intent the lived reality for all the people in your school. So the final stage in that little unit then, of which I am now part, having been through officer training, is there's a platoon commander who's in charge really of 3 different sections, and that person's responsibility is again slightly different. But because each person knows their role very clearly, and each person has a different role, everybody is able to work efficiently and effectively so that time isn't wasted. Everybody is accountable. There is a trust there, and you are expected to absolutely help one another in order to achieve any orders that you are given. And when I completed the training for the officer side, the leadership side of being in the Army Reserves, I realized that all of those things that were being taught to us are all things that I do naturally on a day-to-day basis in my job as a head teacher. And I found it fascinating, because what I then had concrete evidence of, if you like, is that leadership and team building and team creating and creating strong, powerful, energy-fueled teams is pretty much transferable. So if you can do it in the army, you can do it in a school. If you can do it in my school, then it can happen in any of your schools. And I think what Rob said earlier about taking his journey from England, from Gloucestershire, all the way over to where he is now, it means that he can build on some of those skills he learned here, and they're transferable. So some of the things that he's talked about, and perhaps I might talk about, could be completely different to how you're experiencing life at the moment, but certainly in your career as teachers, as educators, and potentially as leaders and team builders, you will have the chance to enact some of those things. So what gives me any kind of license to talk about this stuff? You can see on the screen there, I've done a lot of stuff. I've done a lot of academic stuff alongside my day job. So it's not just about academic knowledge. It's not just about kind of theoretical, conceptual, existential stuff. It's that I do it every day in my real world in school, and every time I'm with my army colleagues as well, and also as a mum, because I think sometimes as parents we might underestimate the power of our leadership capability at home. But trust me, when I joined the army, a lot of the young people I joined with did not have the understanding of what concurrent activity was, whereas some of you guys out there who are parents is absolutely no different to coming down the stairs in the morning at 5 a.m, putting on the kettle, putting the washing on, letting the dog out, emptying the dishwasher, preparing lunches, getting everybody ready to go out the door. All of those things are leadership skills at the very most basic level, how you can organize your time to be efficient and to make sure you meet those deadlines and those targets in every aspect of your life is a leadership skill. So I've written lots of things, I've learned lots of things, I'm still learning, and recently I was asked to write a book, which you may or may not come across in the next few months. That was quite the journey, but none of the things I write about are kind of tricky academic things. They're just day-to-day things, which is what I'm about to talk to you about now. Tony's about to change the slide for me. So the first question that I think I was asked was what makes a strong team? And for me, I was really lucky in my current school. I took over, it was £500,000 in debt. It had the lowest standards of any school in the country, and there was no reason for that to be the case. It was in a nice enough area, deprived area, but nice enough, nicer than any of the surrounding areas around it. It's a place called Ellesmere Port in the northwest of England, which is well known for being socially deprived, economically challenged and so on. So I was lucky, really. When you take over a school and it's kind of in a crisis situation, there is only one way that it can go, and that is up. So I can't claim that all of this is due to my leadership. I suspect elements of it are, because when I was interviewed, I was asked what I planned to do, and the first thing I said was love the school back to life, because I think working with integrity and compassion for me is the same as love, and the school just needed to be loved and breathed life into, really, which I hadn't been for a few years. That was really easy for me. I've got a big heart and I wear it firmly on my sleeve. So my first thing I set about doing was creating a culture, and again, like Rob said, there are millions of books out there that you can read about how to do this and the technicalities of it, but you will never be prepared for when it's your turn. When it's your turn to be the person to set the culture, then you really understand how important that is, because you cannot let your guard down at any time. You have to be walking the walk and talking the talk all the time, because people are looking at you. You are the leader, you are the person who sets the tone, who creates the internal weather in your school. And I think that's really important. Every conversation I have, I see as an opportunity to reinforce the cultural expectation that I have. And I don't mean in terms of ethnic diversity or gender diversity. I mean the behaviour expectations. So no one shouts in my school. I don't shout at people. I don't shout at my colleagues or children. I don't expect anyone else to shout either. And it makes it really simple for me, because when other people are shouting, I can say, do you ever hear me shout like that? And the answer is always no. So then I can legitimately say, in which case then that's not what we do in our school. So it means that it's really clear. I never think that any job is too beneath me, whether that's unblocking toilets, clearing up litter from outside the front gate to make the place look smart, or whatever. I just don't see that that's a thing. And I think that, again, what Rob said earlier about being part of a team and how you sometimes don't know who the boss is. My colleagues have bought me a school hoodie that actually says the boss on the front, because people often mistake me for the caretaker or the PE teacher. Which I just find hilarious. Obviously, I don't look serious enough. So I think creating your culture is really key, and that's every conversation that you have, particularly the most challenging ones. I think that's when leadership really does come through, because I feel most people can lead a good school or a school in a good position, but when a school is in a bad position and you have to have challenging conversations, it is those conversations and how you conduct yourself and how you deal with people in a respectful way that can really inform other people about who you are and what your expectations are, which leads me straight into being values-led. For me, every decision I make is based on the children. I had a conversation this morning actually with some parents, and they said, oh, we know that some parents, if the ones who shout louder will be the ones who get what they want. And I shook my head and I said, that's actually factually incorrect, because parents can shout as loud as they like. I have to look at the children, and we prioritise children and their needs above all else in our school. So our values are children first. I'm very much about the team, and obviously the title is strong leadership and a strong team. But we look after our team in school. That's every staff member, from the cleaners to the cooks, to the office staff, to the TAs, to the teachers, and then the leadership team. And I think, again, little quote, for Rob there is leaders eat last, and that is true. It's true in the army, in the military system, and it's very much true in our school. I think modelling as a leader, again, exactly what I've just said in the previous 2 bullet points. You are the standard, you set the standard, and people are looking to you at all times. Every email you write, every text message you send, we all have a digital footprint. You know, what you will send out, what you will walk past. I think the quote is, the standard that you walk past is the standard that you will accept. And I think having those really high standards of yourself and others is key. Again, somebody mentioned on the Facebook chat, Tony, you mentioned twice trust. And I think trust and honesty are key. And I think sometimes that comes through, again, the most tricky conversations that you have are where you are giving a negative message. It's the how of what you do that the respect that you have in sharing that tricky message and being honest and not hiding from difficult conversations is what builds trust. Because if people know that you can share with them the most challenging information in a respectful way, then they know that you're not going to hide anything. And I think that's absolutely key. And systemically, if you have systems in place, then you must follow those systems, and that is where people will find their trust in the way that you operate your school logistically, and then how you adhere to those systems is how they know that you've got integrity. I think professional respect, I don't clock my teachers and my staff in and out. I don't expect them to necessarily do their PPA on site. I trust them if they want to spend their PPA time in Costa having a coffee and working all day on a Saturday. That's entirely up to them. They're adults and professionals, and as long as their work is done to the high standard that we model and expect, then I'm happy for them to manage their own time, their own workload, and them knowing not to exploit that in a negative way and have respect for that is also key. So it's a two-way relationship there. And facing issues head on. So being honest when you evaluate what goes on, and constantly having a growth mindset. I know it's a bit of a cliche, but actually it's also legitimate. So if you've got a growth mindset, then you're looking for ways to improve, which means that you're looking for areas that you need to improve on, which means you're looking for the things that have maybe gone wrong or could be better. So knowing that that's a non-threatening situation and that it's being done to promote positivity and improvement is key, I think, rather than just brushing tricky issues under the carpet, which I think it's safe to say I've been a part of in the past, because people have not wanted to tackle what could be quite daunting conversations. Oh, I haven't seen these photos. That's hilarious. So how, okay, so that's the first slide was what I believe should be the case. And the how of it, I've kind of alluded to earlier, is relentless attention to detail, really. I see the whole person. I'm pretty good, thanks to my childhood, at reading people, reading their body language, what they say, and more importantly, what they don't say. I kind of have a global understanding of what might affect people because I take the time when I first get to a school to get to know everyone. So my current school's got 97 staff. And when I first arrived 4 years ago, I took time out to meet with every single person and have a half-hour chat with them. It took me a term to do it, but it was well worth the effort because I know and understand their family structures, their relationships, their children, what challenges them, what their dreams are, their hopes, their aspirations, where they've come from, where they want to go to, and so on. And I think sometimes that helps me then to see where they might be struggling, or to kind of see a direction for them where they can develop their character, their professionalism, and so on. But having the attention to detail with human beings and also with the work that you do is really key. I'm not saying I'm a brilliant person at having attention to detail, because we can't sometimes always see that in say, for example, our written work. But I have a team of people around me who I make sure double check my work for errors and to make sure that the tone is correct and that I'm sending out what I want to communicate. So there's that kind of check and balance system that we have, which brings me on to clarity of communication and realistic expectations. So I've developed over the years the ability, and I think I'm pretty good at it, to communicate really clearly with staff. So I explain to them where I see their skill set is and where I see us building on that, and how that could benefit school and what we could do to benefit the person, how that will round their career profile and round them as a professional. I then have realistic expectations of them, and they are always coached. So I wouldn't ask someone to go ahead and do something without the proper coaching system in place, because when we're all learning, the expectation is that we are all going to make mistakes in that learning journey, and that continuum means that when we make mistakes, sometimes they can be quite embarrassing or quite upsetting for people, and it's supporting them through that and developing resilience in those even adult individuals, that I think is really, really important. And again, that comes down to your culture. That's the kind of culture that we have, I believe strongly in coaching, and in demanding high expectations of everyone, and people can meet them. They can smash their own glass ceilings if you give them the opportunity to do that, which means that you have to have attention to their workload. We're all overworked in education, particularly in England, and I'm sure it's the same the world over. I just think most people as well in education want to do the extras. They want to go over and above their job to make sure that children have the best possible experience in life, because we all know that they don't always have it at home. So I think making sure that people don't overload themselves and create already a system where they are likely to fail is really important. My culture and where I believe in being strong and positive is that I praise people publicly. So even if I disagree with what a staff member has done, I would never humiliate them in public. I would do the public praise and the celebration, both in the media, social media, personal letters, personal emails, whatever. But then I will ask people to come in and chat to them about things that have gone wrong. And again, that goes back to having those tricky conversations when they need to happen. And I think, again, that brings me on to the next point, which is listening to people. So really listening, I think as leaders, that's a key skill, and not everyone has it. So sometimes we spend our time waiting to interject and waiting to share our view and waiting to tell people what we want them to do. And we need to just spend more time listening than we do listening to respond. You can really pick up a lot of nuance in what people are saying and again not saying, and you can really try to problem solve if you can work out what that is. And no matter what they say, I've always found that there's always a kernel of truth in what gets said. Even in anger, there's something in there that you can say, is this the real root of the problem? Let's iron this root out, rather than to continue to kind of work on the ephemera of what's going on, which obviously is deeply emotional. And as leaders, I think one of the ways we can build that positive culture is by developing our own emotional intelligence and working on healthy relationships and healthy boundaries, not messaging people late at night, not having unrealistic and unreasonable expectations, and being supportive of people who are in different circumstances to our own. And I think finally that on this side, it brings me to being human, being a human being. I don't purport to be an expert in everything. I don't purport to be perfect in any way. I'm tired at times. I can get cranky. What I will do is articulate to my senior leadership team, I'm tired, I'm struggling this week. I need you to look out for me because I may not be on point. You need to keep an eye on how I'm communicating because I'm feeling a bit fractious. Those sorts of things to me are perfectly acceptable things to say to my leadership team, who I trust, and their judgment to me is invaluable. And they might say, you're tired, why don't you work from home today and remove yourself from the office and give yourself the brain break that you might need, and so on. And I think that being human thing helps them to see that when they are tired and cranky, I can try and support them through that period as well, because we all get exhausted, particularly at the end of term. And having that clarity of communication with your team and being honest with them and showing your human side is no, it's no mean feat, but it's also no bad thing. Well, the pandemic, wow, that was that was interesting. I think the main things we gained from that is that we can all work differently. I know that people the world over were working differently. Remote learning was a challenge for many of us. In schools like mine, where the infrastructure was not yet there, it wasn't great. Even our parents were challenged. Socioeconomically, they do not have the resources that other people have. So we had to learn to work differently. We work anyway about the whole child in our school. So we were taking food parcels to people and stuff like that in any case, working on safeguarding concerns and issues. So it didn't really change some of our work, but it just meant that everybody else realized that they could work differently. Do I expect everybody to be in school now all the time? No, I didn't expect them to before, but it just means that they feel less guilty perhaps about working from home than they did before. I think it shows us that we can be innovative and that we can work quickly You know, in the army context, it's called being agile. That kinetic kind of movement of our brains tends to happen when we're under pressure. And I think everybody was under pressure throughout the pandemic, trying to innovate and come up with different ways of doing things. And I think it pushed people beyond the normal boundaries. In England, we're very constrained by our government expectations. And I think because those expectations were dropped temporarily, it meant that people could be really innovative and creative, which was just such a joy. The irony and juxtaposed against, you know, the illness and the terrible damage and carnage that the pandemic caused, I think the glory of being innovative and creative was just incredible. I think it reminded everybody that we're not islands, although we were all kind of locked down and what have you. It reminded us we can't do things on our own. We do need to reach out to people. And I think a lot of people developed their abilities and their interest in and capabilities for social media. Lots of links and teams were built through that medium. I think, again, teams are there for good times and bad. You know, we've had some great times where we've celebrated work and celebrated, you know, Ofsted developments and so on. But also we've been there to support one another when people have lost family members during COVID. We're very much pastorally supportive. And then, you know, again, I've just said, if we don't have the capacity in our schools, because some people work in very small schools in England, particularly, you know, you might get schools with 2 or 3 teachers. And they don't have the capacity to be as innovative as someone like me who's got over 20 teachers in their school. So I share a lot of my resources on Twitter and LinkedIn and so on quite openly because I've got the capacity to do that. I'm not interested in making money or making a huge name for myself. So I just think we should just share when we can share and be kind. We should probably just do that really and just be good human beings. So I think they're my key lessons from the pandemic, but that's just me. I'm sure other people have far more highbrow lessons to learn, but that's certainly what it taught me. I feel like I've been talking at you for a long time now, so forgive me. This is the last slide. I think this is tricky. Okay, so I was once a teacher in a different country, and the leadership of that school was quite toxic, and I felt very, very vulnerable, and it affected me for a long time. And I think there was nothing I could do in that school, so I had to move on, and the struggle was to move on. And I was given an opportunity, and I was very privileged to be given an opportunity by pure luck. And I think part of life is about luck, but part of life is about working hard in order to create situations where luck is possible to kind of happen. And so I moved. Since then, I've been a big advocate for people being brave, and as a leader, I think you can do that. I always recommend everybody seeks a union representation. Everybody who works in a school, particularly in England, needs to be part of a union. They do more than ask members, do they want to strike? I do pay a lot of money for my subscription, and thank goodness I've not had to use it yet. But I think if an allegation was made against me, then I would be very glad that I'd invested in that system and that opportunity. I think reaching out to other people, that's key to my leadership style anyway. I work as a team. I like to be part of a team. I like to lead a team. If I'm not an expert in that area, then I'm just happy to be part of the working party in any team. So I think reaching out to other people and being happy to be yourself a follower and a part of a team, and accept that you are not going to have all the answers. You are not the main person. Your job as a leader is to be the main person to facilitate other people being brilliant. And I think sometimes in the olden days, leaders thought they had to be wonderful and heroic and fabulous and all things to all people. I already know I'm not those things. So I build a team around me of people that complement my weaknesses and where my strengths will also compensate for their weaknesses. And I think reaching out to people outside of your school, if you are not being supported, could be really beneficial. I know that personally, I've talked to a lot of people through Twitter, and then I just started a thing last year where I bring people up and check on them. But where I've coached them through some very challenging situations and quite toxic ones as well, because sadly there are still toxic people in education. As the scandalous as it is, there are still. So I think you have to take ownership of yourself and think, if you can't change them, then you must move on for your own mental health. Not that that's right, but I think there are complaint processes you can go through as you are separating yourself out from there that will be less challenging for you. Which brings me to having courage. That is not an easy thing to have, I know, but I think having it and standing up to people who are not doing what is expected with the advice and support of your union and the guidance of other people who you've reached out to is a really beneficial thing, because as we all know, there are toxic people out there who, when you do stand up to them, will back down. And finally, I guess, just know that nothing lasts forever. The good times don't, and the bad times don't either. So accepting that and accepting that all things will pass is probably a good place to start, because I think mental health wise, a lot of people have struggled and will struggle. Education is a tricky place to navigate, and without good leadership, it can be very lonely for followers and, you know, people like me who are kind of in the middle. I guess our leaders are our government. They're not necessarily great all the time, so it can be quite lonely. And I would just say it doesn't last forever. And the main thing to focus on is the core of what we do, which is the children, really, and making sure that they have the best start. That is pretty much it, Tony.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you. I think the practical advice there, Victoria, and like I say, it's very obvious, it all comes from the heart, but there's some really, really useful practical advice in there that I think everyone will have benefited from. So I thank you so much for all your help. Like, this is recorded, so if you don't mind, I'm sure a lot of people will be rewatching this to get all those points back again. And thank you so much, and hopefully you'll get a good rest for the next at least a week.
I've got a master's dissertation to write, so I've got 45,000 words to do in the next 10 days. That's it. So I'll be working every day, 10 hours a day. My rest will come in the summer holidays.
Oh, well, we feel for you, but I'm sure that a lot of people can agree with you and know exactly where you're coming from, especially people participating today. Thank you so much, Victoria. So I'll stop sharing myself, and I'm going to go over to Tor, if that's okay. Tor, would you like to take over now?
Yep, lovely. Thank you, Tony. Hi, everybody. I'm just going to try and share my screen. I'm already going to apologise in advance, because not only am I a head teacher, but I'm also an English teacher, which is a double technical catastrophe in the making. So we'll see how we go. Let's have a little go. Okay. Right, I am hoping. Voila. Okay. So I feel very privileged and quite sort of humbled to be in the company of such great speakers this afternoon. And just to give you a little sense of where I've come to and what's brought me to this point, talking to you today about building teams and building stronger schools, I'm talking to you today from a very humid, hot Rome in Italy, where I've been leading my current school for 2 years. I joined the school, like other colleagues here, right after the first lockdown. So I came to a school which literally had been shut for 6 months, and the grass was up here. There were sort of dead rats in the playground. I thought, goodness me, what have I walked into? And it's been a journey, and part of that journey has been really working to rebuild teams of people who had been fractured physically, geographically, as well as sort of academically and socially. So that's been part of the journey. I'll speak a little bit more about that. But going back in time, when I was thinking about, you know, why am I sort of entitled, like Victoria said, to talk to you about teams? Well, in every job I've had, and this started when I sort of taught people how to ride horses when I was 14 years old, right the way through to sort of waitressing, running a hotel, doing retail work, doing call center work throughout my degree, working for an animal welfare organization with a global reach. In every job I've had, fairly rapidly, I found myself in a position where I've been asked to train, to coach, to lead a team, to build a team, to spot talent, to recruit talent. And that's taken me right through into my career in education. And it's been, I think, probably for me, the most wonderful aspect of working in schools is having the opportunity, as Rob said, to work with so many different teams. And as you become a head teacher, you work not just with your student teams, your department teams, you're working with the campus team, the marketing team, the parent team, every different sort of circle in that complicated Venn diagram that is a school. You have the ability to lead, to influence, and to shape a little bit. So it's hugely exciting, can be very daunting, but I'm sure all of you today, as our brilliant speakers have already said, are already having some very powerful and positive influences in the teams you're working in. Now, I come down to a very simple philosophy when I'm working with my teams, also with my family at home, in my personal life. I live by the kind of mantra, work hard, be kind. And I say to children, I say to parents, I say to teachers, I say to my own children, my husband, if we all do that, then the world will be a much better and easier place. And whether that world is the microcosm of our school, our leadership team, or if it is the big global universe. And those were words which were originally sort of coined over in America by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the amazing work they do, spreading education initiatives, social impact initiatives. And I've kind of had that as my mantra ever since I read it about 10 years ago, and it follows me wherever I go in the world. But I thought actually what might be quite nice today is to listen to some children, not from my school. These are children very articulate and surely future team leaders themselves. And this is a little video that a great guy, some of you may follow on LinkedIn, Andrew Elias. He works for the Chatsworth Schools group now. And he's got a little video asking children what they think makes a great leader. And why I'm sharing it with you is you'll hear one particular young lady, and she talks about leaders and groups in a very interesting way. So we'll see if we can make the video work. We'll keep our fingers crossed. And let's have a go. Just going to listen to a few minutes of it.
If you were a leader, you wouldn't just argue with someone. Like, that wouldn't make you a good leader. I think a good leader...
I think we can hear it, Victoria, but I don't think we can see it.
Ah, can you not? Can you hear it?
We can hear it.
Can't see it.
I think last time when we got, was it full screen made a difference? If you're possible to...
Yeah, if you can make it full screen, it would work.
I had it full screen then. But,
Oh, because we can't.
Yeah. Okay, right. Well, can you just listen to it? Because you don't really need to see it. If you can hear it, okay. See, I knew we'd have a problem, Tony. I was being ambitious, but this is about working in a team. We're a team tonight, and I'm taking a risk, and we're in a safe space. So have a listen, and you'll just not see their lovely faces, but you can look at it later. It's on, if we're sharing the slides, the link is there for you to enjoy. But let's just hear what they have to say.
Thank you.
Okay.
If you were a leader, you wouldn't just argue with someone. Like, that wouldn't make you a good leader. I think a good leader is loyal. They help you out when you need them. They don't leave someone behind. A good leader is a good group, because a good group can form a good leader. I think what makes a good leader is someone generous and makes sensible rules and sticks to them. I think a good leader is someone who listens to other people's ideas. I think a good leader has to be kind, but also kind of strict. A bit like the teacher. I think a good leader is someone who also cares about people, but also they don't break rules that they've created, and they act as if they're a member of the public, not a special figure. Even though they're a leader, they need to listen to other people's opinions. A good leader is somebody who perseveres through the highs and lows and makes sure that everybody is heard and that everybody can work together and that each person brings out the best version of themselves when they're with that person.
Which I just thought, wow, what articulate kids. And these are primary age children. Gosh, they really are future leaders, aren't they? But the sense of what they were saying and that sort of idea of kindness, of courage, of generosity, they're all ideas we've heard already, and they're there for a reason, because clearly that is what is important when you're leading a team. But I really loved, as I said, that young lady's comment about a great leader is a great group, and a great group makes a great leader. Because as Victoria was saying, you know, the days of the sort of hero head, the hero team leader are long gone. We can't do it all by ourselves. And I was thinking about, some of my formative experiences in building teams. And the slide I hope you can see now is a sports court. Can you see that, Tony? Has it moved on? Excellent, good. And it's a netball court. And the reason I'm showing you this was in my very first job as a teacher at a fantastic school called Ardingly College, which was a lovely school, boarding school and day school. I joined as a rookie English NQT, all fresh out of university, going to change the world. And one of the expectations was that we would take on an extracurricular activity. So I happily volunteered for netball. I thought, oh, I'll be a netball coach, no problem. I did netball at school 20 years ago, feels like now, but it was about 10 years ago then. And in terms of what I learned about leading teams, working with parents, working with other schools, managing teenage girls' emotions and, high and low, and about winning, about losing, about training hard and reaping the benefits and sometimes still losing. Gosh, I learned more coaching that under 14 netball squad about leadership than probably in many, many, many other courses and trainings and years, in fact. So if you have the opportunity to lead a sports team, to work with a sports team or to observe a sports team, I highly recommend it. And clearly I was a very imperfect netball coach. The parents would teach me more about footwork than I knew myself. I'd be not quite sure which hand signal to do for what, but I grew and learned, and together as a team, we ended up doing pretty well. But I also wanted to point you towards a speaker who I found quite inspirational, and I've been lucky enough to attend some seminars and training sessions with him. And this is Steve Mumby, another northern man, comes from the same neck of the woods as Victoria and I, Cheshire and Northwest. And I love the title of this book. It's on my Kindle, ready to read for my summer holiday reading. And it's a book for leaders who know they don't know it all. And what Steve Mumby talks to us about our teams is that you can never be perfect. You've got to surround yourself with people who, like on this netball court, will all have their own role to play, but they can move into a different space. They can back you up. They can hold back. They can pull you back if you're about to make a mistake. And that kind of ability to create a team that is really more than the sum of the individual parts, and that will work with honesty, with courage, with effort towards a common goal. That is what I've really learned from Steve Mumby, and he does some brilliant talks, podcasts. You can look at him on Google, and I really recommend him to you as a source of information and a really experienced voice in education. Now, I also was thinking about some of the formative moments I've had sort of in my international career. So I worked for 4 years in a school in the Swiss Alps, and it was up in the mountains in a ski resort. So I was very, very lucky to be in a beautiful place. And you can imagine working in a school in the mountains, in a ski resort, the kind of people who were in the PE and outdoor adventure team. They were awesome. They were the most incredible sportsmen and women with whom I've ever worked. So again, you're probably getting a bit of a pattern here. I thought, well, I'll have a go at the paddleboarding course. We want to do paddleboarding with the kids, so I'll learn to do it as well, And quickly realised that I'd perhaps bitten off more than I can chew when we were down here doing our paddleboard instructor training. And in my current school here in Rome, I've been lucky enough to work with an amazing lady who we've appointed as a wellbeing coordinator, and she's been teaching us about being in the comfort zone and moving into the stretch zone and avoiding going too much into the panic zone, and as staff, but also with our children. And I can tell you now, in this sort of 4-day course that I did, I went across all of those zones back and forth a number of times. And I was certainly in my stretch zone. And I think with your teams, and when you're working in a team, it's one of the best things you can do is to put yourself in a scary situation. Here was me, deputy head academic, very comfortable in school, very used to going into people's classrooms, giving feedback, working with them on teaching and learning. And I'm out there with my sports and adventure team. They are the ones who are having to encourage me, keep paddling, you can do it, don't worry. And that role reversal with them leading me was absolutely brilliant for me as a learner, to walk in their shoes, to see how challenging it is managing a group of people. You can see us all there paddling in different directions, no idea what we're doing, not listening. Then having to teach them in an assessed lesson, I'm really empathizing with the kind of experiences that our teachers go through when we're coming into their lessons, when we're giving them our sort of critical, positive feedback, but nonetheless, you know, watching and evaluating and giving them the kind of tips that we feel. So if you can, I'm not saying go out and learn to be a paddleboarding instructor, but if you can walk a few hours in your colleagues' shoes, it's a hugely beneficial experience in building the team rapport as well.
I'm so sorry to interrupt, Tor, but could you just speak a little bit louder? We've had a couple of people saying they can't quite hear you. Maybe a bit closer to the microphone, or just a little bit louder. Thank you so,
no problem.
Thank you so much.
I'm normally too loud, so I'm probably trying not to shout at you. But
me too. I shout all the time. I only have one volume, so thank you.
Okay, so I hope that is that a little bit better. Can you hear me more clearly? Super. Another thing I've been thinking about a lot recently, and I think with COVID, we've seen well-being on every level in our schools damaged, and the mental health of our teachers, of our children, has been really put sort of at risk. So something we're trying to do here at Southlands is to build a culture of psychological safety, to understand that you're not going to be punished or humiliated or embarrassed for speaking up, for being brave, for taking a risk. And as Victoria said, that doesn't mean not having a culture of accountability, because we have to have that. We have to have a culture of accountability in order to have high-performing teams and high-performing schools. But it does mean that we've got your back as leaders, and you are going to be safe. I don't know if there's any Meet the Fockers fans out here, but if you like the film Meet the Fockers, you will remember the circle of trust and what happens if you're outside of the circle of trust. And I quite like it as a kind of analogy for the circle of trust we need to try to create in our schools. And what I want you to do for just a minute is go through this. It says 5 minutes, won't take you 5 minutes because you're going to do it in your heads. Go through this list of 7 questions and apply it to a team you're in, the most sort of significant team you're in, or a team you lead, and just think, where are you on that spectrum of having a really safe and secure team culture? So I'll just give you a minute to read those through and have a think. Okay, and you know, I think this for me is particularly important because, again, like Victoria has mentioned and other colleagues who are here today, I have been in teams which are not psychologically safe, where you do feel scared, you do feel uncomfortable or worried, and what it creates is a sort of a paralysis, and people are afraid to speak up, so actions don't happen, and you find yourself in this sort of whirlpool effect, if you like, and it becomes very, very unhealthy and an unhappy work environment. So again, I would echo the advice given already. If you do find yourself in that situation, try to get help, reach out, look to trusted allies, look to your union, look to your HR, and really try to unlock it, because with some simple steps, you can create a much happier team culture. But really don't sort of be complicit in it. Life is too short and too precious to be sitting in a place or a space which makes you deeply unhappy. And the picture here, you can see, is a very happy picture. And to me, it embodied a very visual representation of our circle of trust here at school. You've got here teachers, primary children, secondary children. And I must tell you, some of these kids here, the older ones, they're the coolest kids in school. There are our year 12s, you know, they are too cool for school almost. And here they are dancing with our sort of 6 and 7 year olds with their teachers doing an Italian medieval dance. And for me, that embodies what a really good, trusting school community does, because the children feel safe, the teachers feel safe, you can have fun, you can make a bit of a fool of yourself, and everybody is on the same wavelength. And that was also a particularly wonderful day because it was the first day after 2.5 years where our whole school community could actually be together, not in bubbles, not separated, not in different zones. And it was the first time we could actually share a community event together. So there's the circle of trust in action. And I hope you can recreate, or you already have, those kind of networks in your schools. And as I mentioned, I think in a team, you do have to be brave. You have to take risks. You have to step outside your comfort zone, as well as being technically challenged. I'm also musically challenged, but I was in Switzerland here with my IB English class, and it was that point, November, IB DP1. If you're in an IB school, you'll know the children are in shock mode. They've suddenly thought, oh, what have I done? This is a bit harder than GCSEs. And we needed to bring a bit of fun back into school in that very grey November. So at the kids' idea, we got a karaoke machine in, and break times became karaoke sessions. And the girls said, come on, miss, will you do it? And we did, and we sang the Eurythmics. And I introduced them to some excellent 80s music. They had a lot of fun. They had material to make fun of me for the next few weeks. And it was a lovely experience. And again, with that pupil team, really bonded us and brought us together. Here, we've got a group of teachers on an inset day, and we created a menu of activities. They could go to a music lesson, they could go to an art lesson, they could do a drama workshop or a PE session. And again, working in other teams' departments, feeling what it's like to be in their kind of world, trying new things and having fun. All important recipes in building those really strong middle leadership and senior leadership and academic teams across the school. But let's face it, being in a team isn't always easy. There are times when, like Sophie here, you sort of sit and you have your head in your hands and you think, oh my goodness, and your teammates maybe haven't noticed. And that's when we really have to, no matter what our role is in the team, make sure we've got their back, making sure we're saying, it's okay, I've got you. Look up, move left, keep moving forward. Don't worry. And for me, I think as a head teacher, that's the most significant responsibility I have, is having my radar and my kind of antennae out for when people aren't feeling great in my team or in any team in the school, and just, watching the non-verbal, listening for the subtext, the words that aren't said. And it comes back to the point that Victoria made. We need to listen with our eyes as well as our ears when we're in a team. And I think to keep yourself fresh, you've got to keep learning as an educator. These are some of the books that I've read in the past that have had a really profound impact and have led me to other educators. The Twitter sphere, what an amazing resource in terms of learning about the world of education, the world of leadership, the world of coaching. And most recently, I've read this book about emotional intelligence coaching, because unless we have that emotional intelligence, that ability to really, really tune in to how our colleagues are feeling, then it's very difficult to help them by asking them the right questions, which is that whole coaching paradigm, and help them. So really, really reading, learning, keeping yourself abreast of things that are going on in the wider world to help you to be a more interesting and interested team leader. And again, Henrietta at the Alliance here said, think about, team building through the pandemic. And there were dark days, but you didn't give up. And there certainly were dark days. Italy, as many of you will be aware, really was traumatized and is still collectively traumatized by the pandemic. Our children are still, and our staff are still wearing masks in class in 30-degree heat. We still are masked, and we will be until the end of the school year. We've had the same kind of disruption that everybody else has had. We've had the same, I started this year in my head teacher mode. Oh, we're going to move from survive to thrive this year. It's going to be different. It wasn't. We went back very quickly into COVID crises, COVID lockdowns, closures, quarantines, different measures, children allowed in school, children not allowed in school. And it really was another year of disruption and upset. And I wanted to share with you a quotation, because after all, I'm an English teacher, but this is from a tremendous book by Hilary Mantel, and it's the last one in the Wolf Hall trilogy. And this quotation is a conversation with three Tudor statesmen, Thomas Cromwell, Thomas Wriothesley, and Thomas Wyatt. And to me, it's set in the sort of 1530s in Tudor England, but my goodness, it summarizes that terribly slippery, difficult, wobbly year that we have had, where nothing has been solid for 2.5 years, in fact, in schools. And we've had to really move with the situation. We've had to be agile, we've had to be dynamic. And I'm hoping very much that next year, at least the lights will go on and our board will be made of slightly firmer stuff than jelly. So how did we cope here in Italy with the stress and the sort of disruption? Well, I took it as a discussion with my team, and we thought, we rise by lifting others. So a key thing we've been working on this year is community impact. So staff inset days we've used as impact days, where we've asked teachers to come up with a project that they want to do either in school or the local community to benefit others. So whether it was painting a mural in our dining room, whether it was going and doing a rubbish pickup in the Pinetta, whether it was putting plants in the nursery garden for the little ones, everybody chose something they wanted to contribute. We did a partnership with a local group, Retake Roma. We did a beach clean last term. And those kind of events, again, where people work across teams, support staff, academic staff. With our beach clean, we had mums, dads, children, grannies, grandpas joining us all out on the beach. And those sort of counterpoints to the fracture, the social disruption of COVID have been really, really helpful, I think, in creating a stronger team in our school. We've done practical things, and I'm sure lots of you do these in your schools already. It started in a very old school shoebox decorated and is now a slightly more technologically refined thing. But we do a weekly shout out where teachers will write thanks and messages to colleagues for things they've done to lift their week or to help a student. And then we share them, and the one drawn out of the hat will get a bottle of Prosecco or chocolates. And just little things like that have been really helpful, I think.
Honestly, it's stressful. It's stressful. It has finished.
We've got
You know that again. I do.
Guys, can we stay muted, please?
I'm doing change.
Excuse me, guys. Whoever's unmuted, can you possibly say? I think muted. I think that's it. Sorry, Victoria.
No problem. No problem. It sounded quite an exciting conversation. Just my very last slide as well is, and it's a point that's been made already tonight a few times, it's impossible to be a good team leader, to play a good part in a team if you don't look after yourself. So I'm lucky to work in a group of schools, and this was us last week in Portugal, group of heads together, sharing ideas, sharing trials and tribulations, and really thinking about ways we can work together going forward. And that professional network is so valuable. So reach out, make those connections with other colleagues, either in your own school or beyond. There you can see the Del Federico clan. That's my husband and 2 kids and our puppy Rocker, and you can see her a bit more grown up there. But being out in nature, spending time with family, getting out to the beach, still paddleboarding, going and enjoying your local environment, traveling. All of us in education, we give so much of ourselves. We give daily, nightly, hourly, in the holidays, at the weekends. So I think the major lesson for me from this pandemic has been that really we need to stop, look after ourselves, look after each other, and only then can we be super effective team builders, team leaders, and team participants. So I hope you will all do something lovely for yourselves this evening and look after yourselves in the last few months of term or whatever's coming next for you, whether you've broken up on holiday already. Do look after yourselves, because only then will you look after everyone else efficiently. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you, Tor. That is amazing. And again, I think that's a perfect note to end on, in that teachers are always giving, and it's so right that you need to be thinking about yourselves. You can't give if it's from an empty well. You've got to be restored and regenerated yourself to be able to share. But I know so many teachers keep on giving. So thank you so much for that. I was just having a quick look in the chat to see if there were any burning. There's lots of thank yous in the chat. There was I did notice a bit earlier on a poor somebody mentioned what to do when they were stuck in a school with poor leadership. When you're a teacher and you're aware that the leadership is not great and not supportive, what can they do? Would any of the speakers like to maybe answer them or give some advice maybe?
Leave.
Nice and short, go. Apparently they've been there 11 years already, so they sound like they've been very patient so far.
Yeah, I would agree. As I say, life is too short, and you have the agency. Make the change, make the connections now, start building a network and look at ways to find a school, and then take time to really learn about that school culture, because you do not want to jump from the frying pan into the fire. Really be careful, do your due diligence, and make sure you're going into a culture that is aligned with your own beliefs.
Thank you for that. Oh yes, we agree. And hopefully the leadership might get the message when all the decent teachers leave that something needs to change. It is very difficult. I'm actually going to be doing a speech on with governors recently. I think governors can also, I don't know if there's a different route to sort of maybe say something about leadership when you're at the ground level. It's very difficult, isn't it, to go
Whistleblower.
Sorry?
It's called whistleblowing.
Okay, and yeah, so yeah, a lot of people don't like that idea, do they? But I think for your own, sometimes for your sake and everybody else in that school, it might be worth saying something, even if you're allowed to do it anonymously. But I can't thank the speakers enough. Is there anybody who would like to ask any questions? If you'd like to put your hand up or unmute yourself and ask questions of the speakers, while we've got this wealth of knowledge here. All I can see is lots of thank yous in the chat. Oh yeah, okay, Citizen, actually I think Citizen Cam, would you like to unmute yourself? Oh, we can't, I'm not sure we can actually hear you. So I can see you have unmuted, but.
Yeah, I think it's muted himself.
I'm not sure your microphone's working. I'm so sorry. Would you like to put something in the chat? Because I think it was you that was saying that you were in a toxic environment at the moment, but we can't quite hear you. Oh, I'm sorry. Is it me or I don't think we can hear you. I'm very sorry.
Yeah, we can't hear you. Sorry.
Are you able to type anything in the chat? Maybe I can say it for you.
Yeah, he's typing. This was very informative.
Yes, what can you do when the leaders are not listening to you? I think what's the message we've been getting is quite clearly, if you can find somewhere else to go, sometimes it isn't easy. I would consider thinking about leaving. Could anybody else offer any advice to him?
I think, I go through what Victoria said. You can assess the situation you're in and what Tora's said. When I went to Wydeen, which had a very toxic school culture and a leadership, it sounds awful criticizing, but unfortunately, I know what was at the school, and the people had sort of really struggled and suffered. As I say, the union leader who actually led them on strike had a brilliant leadership set of skills, and they were able to transform the school. She's now my successor, and very proud of what they did. But I think speaking truth to power is always important, and we're not gods at the top of the tree or the chain. And you have governing bodies. You've always got a good deputy. I was given, Victoria's about her military background. I remember being given the peacekeeping medal by accident and a sort of joke by some of the teachers, because as a deputy academic, I used to have to always keep the balance of power and be the eyes and ears and soak up all that sort of emotion from staff and be able to talk. And there's always somebody in the team that you can go to, you'll find, that perhaps can listen and convey messages back to the head. And I want to pick a point Tor said. You know the great leaders, they walk the shop floor every day. They're on the school gates, they know the kids' names. They're in the lunch queue, organising them. You saw a great picture of Victoria with a high fluorescent jacket on. That's what the good leaders do. And you don't know they're there because they're in the teams doing things. I think you can find voices in a school. Even if you can't necessarily speak to the head. We've all worked for really bad heads and bad school leaders, and we know what we've had to do to kind of try to get a change in the school or the system. But it is tough, and sometimes it doesn't happen overnight, but you'll often find you're not alone. And, you know, good schools have good staff voice, they have good student voice, they have good parent voice. I don't see schools moving so much in the direction, as I say, in the old days, but they still exist. They still exist in different systems. But you know you're not alone. And I think global arenas are good like this, to be able to have these conversations sometimes and get a different perspective and a neutral voice and advice. And I know, Tor, you mentioned the power of the Twitter sphere. I know sometimes we feel Twitter can be quite toxic, and educators, especially in the UK, with the trads and the progs all jumping on each other every 5 seconds. There is another side to it, and it's very supportive with lots of good resources and good people there. And as Victoria said, they aren't out there to make a name or sell you more snake oil. They're actually there to support and lift each other up as well. And that's why we love our global education community.
Thank you, Rob. That's a great advice. And like I say, we are all human. That's one thing we've got to remember. And I think that all we can do is help each other. And I think, you know, the fact that we are working together and all with a common aim, like hopefully there'll be somebody in your school that you can go to and talk to and support each other to cope with what the situations we're all in. I've just noticed Sachin Jadhav, how to balance between professional work culture and personal attachment with team members. Yes, there is a fine balance there, but getting too attached to team members. Would anyone like to come back with that?
I'm not sure what this question relates to. It feels like it could be a little bit of a challenging subject, but I would say healthy professional relationships are key. I would never have a personal relationship with anybody at work. I wouldn't advocate anybody does that. It never ends well. In several schools I've been in, I've seen it unfold and happen, and it causes untold stress on both the people in the relationship and all of their colleagues. That might be too direct for some people to hear that message, but I don't think it's good. You can't avoid people developing, I suppose, attachments to one another, but I think, you know, if you are emotionally intelligent and intuitive, you can kind of see that, and I think a healthy conversation around this isn't really a good idea is perhaps useful. But I would definitely not advocate it if you're the person who's thinking about maybe jumping into a relationship with someone at work. It's really not a good idea.
Thank you, Victoria. Yes, I think professionalism is the key point there, isn't it? We are all professionals, and it's finding that work-life balance, is it, sometimes.
Tony, I had a head when I first joined senior leadership many years ago, who wanted to have away days and wanted to always have weekends away. And it seemed good at the time to develop a team culture, but then it turned into getting drunk and actually watching the team get drunk. And we kind of had to make a stand at the end, and it was taking us away from our families. And it wasn't even well-meaning in the end. It wasn't a very nice way of, it was a bit macho and a bit laddish. And I'm always conscious that we're going to have a picnic on Tuesday when we say goodbye to the kids finally, and just go off to the forest, and there's a little restaurant there, and we're going to say goodbye to our leavers. But we don't need to live in each other's pockets. We have a very defined private lives and our professional lives, and exactly what Victoria said. Sometimes, and even sometimes in strong school communities, it's very difficult to avoid that. My predecessor used to live in the same apartment blocks near the school with all the international staff. Didn't go down well with the local staff. I live very removed now, must be Billy no mates, right in the centre, away from everybody. It works. I always politely refuse offers of meals with parents or all those kind of things, just because, you know, we have to sometimes keep a bit of distance. But at the same time, as we've said this evening, there are loads of other ways you build the glue and the culture and the links in a very healthy, productive, professional way with your teams, with your colleagues. That doesn't have to be, you know, sort of, you know, boys' weekends and all that kind of nonsense.
Thank you, Rob. Again, fantastic advice. Like you say, everyone does have their own family life, so you still got to have your work and family life balance, and leaders need to recognise that too. Thank you so much, everybody. I'm quite aware that we're getting quite late on with the time, but I don't think...
Sorry, Tony.
Sorry?
Can I quickly say something?
Yes, please do.
This is quite insightful because, I mean, I left high school quite a long time ago, but I've never seen, like, this is how teachers, like, what they do to actually create us as students. Like there's a lot that goes into the background of teachers building teams and trusting each other and not going to the pubs, because I used to think the teachers just go to the pubs after school to, like, you know, have fun and stuff like that. So now seeing it, it's wow to me. It's quite nice. Yeah.
Thank you, Henrietta. It's nice to have the viewpoint from a very recent student and to somebody who's not in the education profession to see from outside that we are humans, and it's not just hit and miss. It's very well planned and organized. Thank you for your insights, Henrietta. That is amazing. I just want to also mention we have got the competition. If anyone wants to do a competition, we're giving away some free stuff, some free interactive student engagement opportunities, and hopefully trips in there as well. And actually, as you mentioned, John Rolfe, Rob, he's actually going to be drawing the competition for us. So John Rolfe on the 7th of June will be drawing our competition. So please get your entries in so we can start sharing the love as well, and supporting each other and engaging. And like I say, please use the platform, please use the Facebook page to carry on these conversations. We will be doing another conference next month. We're also doing What's Exciting in Education, more coming up in that. So please contribute. The whole point of Global School Alliance, it's a membership organization. The platform's there to share and support each other with advice like this. So please do use the facilities and let us support each other. Thank everybody. I want to thank everyone for participating this evening, especially our amazing speakers. Thank you for turning up, and enjoy the rest of your day wherever you are. Thank you very much for coming. So bye for now.